Everybody, welcome back. So we're in Alma chapter 43, verse 26. And he caused that all the people in that quarter of the land should gather themselves together to battle against the Lamanites, to defend their lands and their country, their rights and their liberties. Look at that. Defend their lands and their country and their liberties. Therefore they were prepared against the time of the coming of the Lamanites. And it came to pass that Moroni caused that his army should be secreted in the valley which was near the bank of the river Sidon, which was on the west of the river Sidon in the wilderness. And Moroni placed spies round about, that he might know when the camp of the Lamanites should come. And now as Moroni knew that the intention of the Lamanites, that it was their intention to destroy their brethren, or to subject them and bring them into bondage, that they might establish a kingdom unto themselves over all the land. And he also, knowing it was the only desire of the Nephites to preserve their lands, and their liberty and their church, therefore he thought it no sin that he should defend them by stratagem. Therefore he found by his spies which course the Lamanites were to take. Therefore he divided his army and brought a part over into the valley, and concealed them on the east and on the south of the hill Riplah. And the remainder he concealed in the west valley, on the west of the river Sidon. West of west, huh? And so down into the borders of the land of Monte. And thus, having placed his army according to his desire, he was prepared to meet them. And it came to pass that the Lamanites came up on the north of the hill, where a part of the army of Moroni was concealed. And the Lamanites had passed the hill Riplah, and came into the valley, and began to cross the river Sidon, the army which was concealed on the south of the hill, which was led by a man whose name was Lehi. And he led his army forth, and encircled the Lamanites about on the east in their rear. And it came to pass that the Lamanites, when they saw the Nephites coming upon them in their rear, turned them about and began to contend with the army of Lehi. And the work of death commenced on both sides. Notice that's an interesting way to phrase it, the work of death. But it was more dreadful on the part of the Lamanites, for their nakedness was exposed to the heavy blows of the Nephites with their swords and their scimitars, which brought death almost at every stroke. While on the other hand, there was now and then a man fell among the Nephites by their swords in the loss of blood, they being shielded from the more vital parts of the body, or the more vital parts of the body being shielded from the strokes of the Lamanites, by their breastplates and their arm shields and their headplates, and thus the Nephites did carry on the work, death among the Lamanites, the work of death. And it came to pass that the Lamanites became frightened, because of the great destruction among them, even until they began to flee towards the river Sidon. And they were pursued by Lehi and his men, and they were driven by Lehi into the waters of Sidon. And they crossed the waters of Sidon. And Lehi retained his armies upon the bank of the river Sidon, that they should not cross. And it came to pass that Moroni and his army met the Lamanites in the valley on the other side of the river Sidon, and began to fall upon them and to slay them. Wow, okay, so began to slay them. And the Lamanites did flee again before them towards the land of Monte, and they were met again by the armies of Moroni. Now in this case the Lamanites did fight exceedingly. Yea, never had the Lamanites been known to fight with such exceedingly great strength and courage. No, not even from the beginning. And they were inspired by the Zoramites and the Amalekites, who were the chief captains and leaders by the Zarahemnah. Who was their chief captain, or their chief leader and commander? Yea, they did fight like dragons. Fight like dragons, look at that. That's an interesting thing to say in a religious text. And many of the Nephites were slain by their hands, Yea, for they did smite into many of their head plates, and they did pierce many of their breastplates. And they did smite off many of their arms, and thus the Lamanites did smite in their fierce anger. Straight arms coming off, family. Nevertheless, the Nephites were inspired by a better cause, for they were not fighting for monarchy nor power, but they were fighting for their homes and their liberties. This is quite interesting, this language here. Fighting for homes and liberty. Their wives and their children and their all, yea, for their rights of worship in their church. And they were doing that which they felt was the duty which they owed to their God. For the Lord had said unto them, and also unto their fathers, that inasmuch as ye are not guilty of the first offense, neither the second, ye shall not suffer yourselves to be slain by the hands of your enemies. And again the Lord has said that ye shall defend your families even unto bloodshed. Notice this. Defend your families no matter what. Therefore, this cause were the Nephites contending with the Lamanites, to defend themselves and their families and their lands, their country and their rights and their religion. And it came to pass that when the men of Moroni saw the fierceness and the anger of the Lamanites, they were about to shrink and flee from them. And Moroni, perceiving their intent, sent forth and inspired their hearts with these thoughts, yea, the thoughts of their lands, their liberty, yea, their freedom from bondage. And it came to pass that they turned upon the Lamanites, and they cried with one voice unto the Lord their God, for their liberty and their freedom from bondage. And they began to stand against the Lamanites with power. And in that selfsame hour they cried unto the Lord for their freedom. And the Lamanites began to flee before them, and they fled even to the waters of Sidon. Now the Lamanites were more numerous, yea, by more than double the number of the Nephites. Nevertheless, they were driven insomuch that they were gathered together in one body in the valley, upon the bank of the river Sidon. Therefore the armies of Moroni encircled them about, yea, even on both sides of the river. Well, no, they're completely enclosed, essentially. For behold, on the east were the men of Lehi. Therefore, when Zarahemnah saw the men of Lehi on the east of the river Sidon, and the armies of Moroni on the west of the river Sidon, that they were encircled about by the Nephites, they were struck with terror. Now Moroni, when he saw their terror, commanded his men that they should stop shedding their blood. Well, that's quite unique. Why would he have mercy? Why? I guess he wants to, say, hey, calm down and such, but still. 37 was interesting, and the work of death commenced on both sides. Brought death with every stroke, fighting like dragons. Their liberties. Interesting.